Hi, I'm Darlene. And I was 6 months pregnant when my mother-in-law locked me out of my own home. My husband stood behind her, silent. No explanation, no apology, just a closed door. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing they'd planned it. Quietly, strategically. So, what do you do when your family sees you as disposable? And how far would you go to prove you weren't? The door didn't slam. It clicked shut, as if the sound had been rehearsed. Neat, final, the kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention but demands it anyway. I stood on the porch of the Hargrave estate, 6 months pregnant, my breath visible in the Texas cold. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. My hands just held tighter to the strap of a half-zipped duffel bag that wasn't supposed to be packed tonight. Inside, I could still hear her voice echo through the mahogany. She was never good enough. I waited for Gavin to speak. He didn't, not a word, not a step toward me. Just the low hum of Leona's satisfaction and the sharp clink of crystal from the living room, and that silence, wide and tall, stretching like a cathedral, settled between us for good. 2 days ago, he looked me in the eye and said, "No matter what happens, you're safe here." He said it like he meant it, like he was my person. But people like Gavin didn't lie. They just retreated, silently, strategically. I didn't ring the doorbell again. I didn't call out. Instead, I turned. Slowly. As if I needed to register how far gone I was now. From them. From the version of me who believed she was part of something. By the time I reached the driveway, my phone was buzzing. "Raina, pack what you can. I'm 30 minutes out." She didn't ask what happened. Didn't need to. Raina always knew before I did. When I slid into her car, she didn't speak right away. She glanced over, saw the tear tracks I hadn't realized were there, and nodded toward the back seat. A blanket, a thermos of tea, a second bag in case mine had been left behind in the chaos. She always prepared for things going wrong. Not because she was pessimistic, because she knew people. In the quiet that followed, I stared out the window at the trees blurring past, thinking, I wasn't just kicked out. I was erased. And that hurt more. We arrived in Austin close to midnight. Her place was neat, cool-toned, polished floors, city view that looked nothing like Dallas. I dropped my bag by the door. She pointed to the guest room, then stepped back to give me space. I didn't go to sleep. I sat by the window, watching a city that didn't know me yet, wondering if that was a good thing. I put my hand on my belly. It kicked once, light but insistent. "You're still here," I whispered, "and I swear to you, they won't erase you too." I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to begin forgetting the sound of that click. Tomorrow, I stopped waiting for them to give me anything. I didn't realize what had happened until I stood at the checkout counter, balancing almond milk, prenatal vitamins, and a jar of pickles on my hip. The clerk scanned everything. I swiped my card, declined. I tried again, slower this time. Double-checked the number, declined. I pulled out the backup card, one Gavin told me to keep, just in case. Declined. The people in line behind me shifted, muttered under their breath. I nodded to the clerk, left everything on the belt, and walked out. I didn't feel embarrassed, not really. That would have meant I still believed this was some kind of mistake. It wasn't. It wasn't embarrassment. It was erasure. By the time Raina picked me up, I was sitting on the curb, knees pressed together like I was bracing for a gust that would carry me away. She didn't ask. She knew. Later that day, she pulled open her laptop with the kind of composure that only ever meant something terrible had just been confirmed. "Your name is gone," she said. "From every joint account. They moved everything. Even your medical insurance is now under Gavin's name." She flipped the screen around. The transaction logs glared back at me like sealed verdicts. Each date was a dagger. 48 hours before I was pushed out of their house, no, before I was exported like an expired product, every line of access was terminated. Silently, strategically. "She erased you like a stock option," Raina muttered. I didn't speak. I walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, and stared at the water as it slipped into the drain in quiet spirals. The handle squeaked. The drip echoed. Money wasn't power. Money was signal. It was a gate, a wall, a lock. A fingerprint on the doorknob of everything you'd built, and they just wiped mine off without even blinking. 16 months ago, Gavin had said, "Let me handle the finances. It's easier." Easier. It wasn't ease. It was ownership. That night, Raina drove. We didn't say much, just rolled through Austin under dim traffic lights and the kind of silence that stretches like smoke. She glanced over. "Do you want revenge?" "No," I said. My voice was low, steady. "I want to exist outside their version of me." She nodded slowly, then reached for her bag and pulled out a folder. The manila was creased. The ink on the corner read, "Threalogic LLC Draft 1. "If you're serious, we start here," she said. I opened it. My name was there, in bold, alone. It didn't look like a declaration, not yet, but it looked like freedom. He didn't even sit down when he asked me. I was rinsing dishes, the house dim, the sound of running water barely enough to drown out the heaviness in the room. He stood behind me like he was trying to find the courage to break something gently, but couldn't decide which part to fracture first. "You didn't plan this, right?" My hands froze in the sink. "You mean the baby?" I asked without turning. He paused. "I mean, the timing. My mother said it might look calculated." There it was. Not even a full sentence, but enough to crack something clean down the middle of me. A suggestion wrapped in cowardice. A betrayal spoken with the politeness of a dinner guest. I turned off the faucet. Water pooled at the edge of the porcelain, clinging like questions that would never get answered. "What do you think?" I asked, voice even. He didn't look at me. "It's just, there's a lot going on with the company. The IPO's delicate. She's worried how this will look." "Of course she is." He tried to say something else, some half-formed defense, but I had already walked past him. My chest was tight, not with grief, but with clarity. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I sat with Raina at her kitchen table in Austin. She had her laptop open, a spreadsheet scrolling with the ease of muscle memory. "Take a look at this," she said, pointing at a column. "The SEC filing for Hargrave's IPO went through final clearance 2 days before you told him about the pregnancy." I stared at the screen. "They knew," she added. "This wasn't just personal, it was strategy." My throat burned, not from sadness, but from understanding. I had not been collateral damage. I had been the variable they couldn't predict. I went to the guest room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. I could still hear Gavin's voice in my head, that hesitation, that shifting weight of a man torn between ambition and decency, and I realized he never once asked how I felt. My womb had become a liability, my child, a calculation. They had turned something sacred into a scandal. I reached for a pen. If they were going to treat my body like a breach in the firewall, I'd turn the breach into a system they couldn't touch. Later that evening, Raina found me typing. The screen glowed with a new document title. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Naming the company." I didn't look up. She didn't ask why. The name settled on the page like a promise. Threalogic. If they wanted to reduce me to timing, then I'd show them exactly what timing looked like when it hit back. The thumb drive had been in the back of my drawer for months. Untouched, but never forgotten. Raina was already asleep, her bedroom door closed, the city outside pressing its light through the blinds like soft surveillance. I sat at her kitchen counter, the apartment quiet enough to hear the hum of the refrigerator. I plugged in the drive. Folder after folder opened. Prototype mock-ups, simulation reports, archived video pitches from my early team, the ones we never got to finish. They hadn't disappeared. They were waiting, like me. I clicked through them one by one, my fingers steadier than I expected. I found the LLC draft, my name typed cleanly at the bottom. No Hargrave branding, no signature from Gavin. They never wanted my ideas. They wanted my compliance. Good. Because now I wanted nothing from them. The next morning, Raina was stirring her coffee when her phone buzzed. She read the message without flinching, then passed it across the table. "They're building something that looks familiar," she said. "Same input logic, same routing framework. Their legal team's trying to patent a system your code predates by a year." I stared at the screen. My algorithm, my language, now reformatted and repackaged under a corporate name that hadn't even existed until after I was gone. "They're not just pretending I didn't exist," I said. "They're rewriting me." I didn't feel rage exactly. It wasn't loud enough. What I felt was colder, tighter, a silent kind of fury. Not the fire that burns. It was the fire that holds, that waits, that endures long enough to make itself undeniable. I remembered the first time I showed Gavin a logistics model I'd built in grad school. He laughed, not cruelly, just dismissively. "You think that's going to change the industry?" he said. And Leona? She never asked what I did, just who I knew, where I was from, what I wore, and if I smiled enough. They thought I was decoration. They didn't know I was architecture. That night, I opened a new browser tab and registered Logic. No champagne, no celebration, just keystrokes and a slow exhale. I wasn't building a company. I was reclaiming ground. The next morning, Raina found me already dressed, typing. "What now?" she asked. "Now we move from anger to architecture," I said. I uploaded the prototype code, pressed test, and watched the loading bar crawl forward like a quiet dare. Let's see how the empire handles being watched. The stage wasn't built for people like me. Not the kind who get escorted off estates by men in suits with instructions from their mother-in-law. But there I was, standing under fluorescent lights in a Houston tech conference, 10 feet from where Leona Hargrave herself now sat. Front row, tight-lipped, her pearl necklace still glinting like it had something to prove. My hands didn't shake when I clicked start. The screen behind me lit up with simulations, route optimizations, waste reduction graphs, projections in bold, all powered by public data, including legacy logistics models from companies like Hargrave Atelier. I didn't say her name. I didn't have to. In the past year, outdated routing systems led to nearly $22 million in inventory loss across the luxury apparel market, I said. We built a solution that learns faster than your market can break. I looked up once. Leona's jaw tightened. Her assistant leaned in to whisper something. She didn't blink. I had seen that face before. The exact moment someone realizes they've underestimated you so completely that they don't even know where to begin retracting the narrative. By the time the applause started, I had already stepped off stage. That night, Raina and I returned to the apartment in Austin. She poured 2 glasses of something we couldn't name, then tossed me her phone. An email was open. No sender, just bold text. "We suggest you stop using stolen property before we remind the industry who you really are." Raina read it again. "Classic Hargrave move." "They're scared," I said. "They're exposed," she corrected. I didn't answer. I just sat down at my desk and pulled up the recording of the presentation. I uploaded it to the company website. Then I posted it publicly. Caption: "Innovation belongs to the ones who build it, not to the ones who silence it." Raina raised a brow. "You sure?" I nodded. I'm done being afraid of people who hide behind inherited power. It was true. I wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. I was reclaiming something. 2 hours later, across the city, Leona stood in her private office with a phone pressed to her ear. "She wants a war?" Her voice was clipped, precise. "Then prepare the files. Everything she's ever said, signed, clicked. I want it all documented." Her assistant paused. "Are we launching a formal suit?" "No," she said coldly. "We're going to bury her without firing a shot." And just like that, the next game began. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and hand-delivered. Raina turned it over twice before sliding it across the table to me. "We'd like to talk. For the baby." That was all the note inside said, scrawled in Leona's perfect cursive. Not a phone call, not an apology, just an invitation layered in performance. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I showed up. The Hargrave estate hadn't changed, still dripping with the kind of money that preferred to whisper rather than shout. I was led into the sitting room, where Leona waited with tea, a soft piano playing somewhere distant. "Let's put all this behind us," she said as I sat. "For your child's sake." Her voice was velvet, her smile stretched. I watched her pour tea like she was auditioning for empathy. I didn't touch mine. Then she nodded toward her assistant, who placed a black folder in front of me. Raina, seated beside me, opened it before I could. NDA, lifetime clause. A $500,000 payout stretched over 5 years. A clean forfeiture of any future legal claim to Hargrave assets, intellectual or otherwise. Raina turned a page, then another. No mention of what they did, no admittance, just hush money. she muttered. She's not offering you peace. She's buying your erasure. Leona sipped her tea. Surely you want to move on from all this unpleasantness. I stared at her. I saw the real play. This wasn't about legacy. It wasn't about Gavin. It wasn't even about the baby. This was about fear. She was scared. She just didn't know how to name it. I'm not here for a payout, I said quietly. You've been through a lot. This is a chance to step back. Gracefully. That word again. Gracefully. They only used it when they wanted to shame you for not crawling. I stood up. Thank you for the offer, I said. I decline. Raina didn't flinch. She gathered the folder, nodded once to Leona, and we left. Back at her apartment, Raina opened a second envelope that had arrived while we were gone. Inside were photos. Me at the forum, angles too precise to be casual. They've been tracking you, she said. This came from a contact. The metadata links back to Hargrave PR. I looked at the photos. I looked at myself, frozen mid-speech, mid-smile, mid-victory. So this wasn't an olive branch, I said. Raina didn't answer. It was a countdown. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon. Just 4 words. Can we talk? Please. I stared at it for a while. Long enough that Raina looked up from her laptop and raised an eyebrow. I didn't answer her. I didn't answer him either. But later that night, I said yes. When Gavin showed up at my apartment, he looked like someone had pulled the air out of him. Same dress shirt, sleeves rolled up like it made him approachable. Same tie, half knotted, like he wanted me to see him as casual. Human. I was scared, he said. I didn't invite him in. He stayed in the hallway. I wasn't ready. But I miss you. I miss us. And I want to be in our baby's life. He said it like it was a confession, like I'd been waiting on him to realize it. I didn't speak, just watched him fidget, look at his shoes, then back at me. Finally, I said, that's not up to me anymore. Later, Raina and I sat at the kitchen table. She dropped a manila folder in front of me, the seal on it still crisp. He filed for partial guardianship, she said, 2 months ago, quietly, before he came crawling back. I opened the file. Court notes. Rejected on the grounds of unstable residence, documented conflict of interest with Hargrave's legal counsel, and a lack of direct involvement in prenatal care. He didn't come back because he changed, Raina said flatly. He came back because the court said no. I closed the folder slowly. Then we'll make sure they say no again, permanently. That night, I sat in the nursery. The crib wasn't built yet. The walls were still bare. But I folded the baby's clothes one by one. Tiny onesies, soft socks, a blanket Raina had bought with no print, no pink or blue, just light gray. Flashbacks hit like waves. Gavin rolling his eyes when I said I wanted to delay our honeymoon to pitch a prototype. Leona telling me during Christmas dinner, the best thing a woman can do is be invisible when important things are happening. I held a onesie in my hands and whispered, you deserve more than presents. You deserve participation. I picked up my phone. Raina, I said when she picked up, I want to file for full custody, with visitation restrictions. She didn't even pause. Already started the paperwork. I looked at the folded clothes, at the window beyond them, where Austin's skyline blinked quietly. If Gavin wanted to be a father now, he could start by learning what that actually meant. Raina didn't knock. She just pushed the door open and tossed the tablet onto the table between us. You need to see this. My eyes followed the headlines crawling across the screen like cracks through glass. 3Logic secures multi-year deal with former Hargrave partners. Ex-Hargrave CEO accused of silencing innovation. Carla Jensen speaks. We were erased. Now we rewrite the rules. I leaned back, the sound in my ears dulling to a single thump. My heartbeat, steady but fast. It didn't feel like victory, not yet. Just the edge of something breaking open. Leona must have seen it first thing that morning. On the same boardroom screen she used to control every conversation in the company. Her name no longer synonymous with stability. Her narrative fractured. And then came the meeting. She walked in, perfectly tailored as always, demanding explanations. Silence met her. You're letting this smear campaign dictate your decisions? She asked. A senior board member, the same one who had once complimented her on her quarterly foresight, now kept his hands folded. You put personal pride above fiduciary duty, he said, almost bored. And then Carla stood. You told me I didn't belong. You told her the same thing. Now we own the conversation. Leona didn't argue. She didn't need to. The vote was already done. Later that day, Raina and I sat across from each other, the silence thick with both triumph and the weight of what it had cost. This could change everything, she said. I nodded. It already has. She slid the new contract across the table. Global expansion, early acquisition offers. I didn't touch it right away. I didn't do this to be a figurehead, I said. I came this far to outlive them, not to replace them. And then, just before sunset, a courier knocked on my door. A package. Inside, a single note, handwritten. Your father once asked me if you were worth the name Hargrave. I suppose we both have our answers now. I folded the paper. Neat. Clean. No need to tear it. I whispered, I never needed your name. I just reclaimed mine. The lights were warmer than I expected. Softer. Almost flattering. Like they'd been chosen by someone who believed stories should end gently. The Austin Convention Center wasn't built for revolution, but tonight it held mine. My name, my full name, was displayed on the screen above the stage, not as someone's wife, not as a brand extension, just me, just Darlene. Innovation in ethical logistics, that's what they were calling it. Raina squeezed my shoulder before I stepped up. She didn't say good luck. She didn't need to. As I walked to the podium, I saw the crowd rise, some clapping, others just watching. In the third row, Gavin stood silently, hands folded, his face unreadable. But it wasn't him I felt. It was her, Leona Hargrave, sitting alone in the last row, not trying to be seen, not trying to disappear either. Just there, a woman without a crown, watching the name she tried to erase light up the room. I didn't mention her. I didn't need to. I thanked my team. I thanked Raina. I spoke about building things that mattered and about what it meant to be told you don't belong and do it anyway. Afterward, as people mingled and smiled, I saw her standing by the exit. Leona, still elegant, still cold. She didn't approach, just waited until I passed near enough. You were never one of us, she said. There was no venom in her voice, just finality. I didn't flinch. I didn't snarl. I smiled. Exactly. Gavin stood nearby. He didn't speak, but his silence didn't hurt this time. It sounded like recognition. Later that night, I sat alone in the nursery, folding a small blanket, thinking about the first night I spent in Raina's apartment, clutching fear like a coat that didn't fit anymore. I thought about the front porch in Dallas, about standing alone, about silence that stretched like smoke and choked, and now, this. You can be cut from the story and still write the next chapter, I whispered, resting a hand on my belly. I opened a small wooden box in the corner. Letters, notes, keepsakes I couldn't bring myself to throw away. And there it was, one from my mother, written long before my wedding, her handwriting shaky but strong. Don't let the people you love shrink you into something they can carry. I stared at it, long, then read it again. In the quiet, I spoke softly, just loud enough for one person to hear, though he wasn't born yet. We don't carry their legacy. We plant our own. Looking back, I don't think strength means you never break. I think it means you keep walking, quietly, even when no one claps, even when they close the door in your face and pretend you never existed. That's what I want you to remember. Your worth isn't measured by who accepts you. It's defined by who you become when they don't. If you're in a place where you feel erased, minimized, or silenced, I want you to know there is still time to rewrite your part in the story. You are not behind. You are not late. You're just beginning. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild after being pushed aside? What gave you the strength to keep going? If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't connect, tell me why. I'm here to listen. And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and deeply human, go ahead and subscribe. We've got more coming, and I promise you'll see yourself in them. You're not alone. You never were.